Hey guys, what's going on? It's Dave from Evil Eye Games. For today's video, I'm going to show you how to create something like this hallway in Blender and how to get it over to Unreal Engine. After playing with the blockout tools, I was able to decide on a size for my hallway, and I figured a 10-meter hallway by a 6-meter hallway by a 3-meter hallway was a really good size to have hallway segments in. So I ended up throwing this together. And I kind of previewed this in previous videos. But basically what we have here is there's one floor piece here, which is a flat plane. There's a wall that's copied on both sides. There's a ceiling. There are these archways or bulkheads that also act as doors with a door piece that goes into the bulkhead. And if we take a look from outside, this has been designed so that there are no UVs blocking light from coming in from the outside. So I'm trying to save on displaying as many faces as possible. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to get into the thick of it. We're going to get into creating the materials that make up this hallway and how to put it together in Blender so that it works once it gets into Unreal Engine. Now this may be a longer video and I might have to cut it up into multiple videos. We'll see how that goes, but let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to switch over to Blender, and I have it set to start to our blank start. So if you don't have that, go ahead and take a look at the video before this and how to set up Blender in order to make it friendly for Unreal Engine 4. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the floor, and we're going to go over to our Create tab here. And if you don't see that, you can bring it up with the T key. And we're going to go ahead and add in a plane. And this plane is going to be the base for our floor. And I want to adjust the size of this plane, so I'm going to bring up the menu on the right with the N key. And right now it's a 2 meter by 2 meter plane. Now in Unreal Engine, the way that the forward axis works is it's in the positive X direction. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to make the length of this in the X direction. So I'm going to set our X dimension to 10. And then I'm going to set our Y dimension to 6. So we will have a 6 by 10 plane that is going to go ahead and be our floor. Now if we look up to the top right here, we're going to see in the outliner the plane that we just added. So I'm going to go ahead and rename this. I'm going to double click on it, and we're just going to simply call this floor. And really, that's all I have for the floor in that level. It's just a plain, blank plane, and that's it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to prep this for transfer over to Unreal Engine. So we're going to go ahead and in the top right corner where the diagonal lines are, I'm going to go ahead and drag this out. And then I'm going to hide the left menu over here by hitting T and the right menu by hitting N. And we're going to go ahead and switch over to our UV image editor. And just like before, this is a simple plane, so we don't have to do very much for it. And I'm going to go into, right here it is, the data table, which is the 3 dots with the triangle. And I'm going to drag open the UV map section here. So we're going to go ahead and generate a UV map for this. In our left window, I'm going to hit Tab to go into edit mode. I'm going to make sure everything is selected by hitting A until everything highlights. I'm going to go to Shading and UV. I'm going to give it a flat face shading. And then I'm going to go to UV Mapping, and I'm just going to select Unwrap. And that'll go ahead and unwrap our UV map for us. Then I'm going to click on the plus button to the right of our UV map to add a UV Map 01. And I'm going to go to Unwrap, and we're going to Smart UV Project. And I'm going to set the island margin to 0.05. All the rest of the default values are okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And so now we have a regular UV map and we have a light map. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start to save this. So I'm going to File, Save As. And I'm just going to give this project a title. I already have a Hallway 01. So I'm going to call this our Hallway _ 02. And it'll save it as a blend file. So let's go ahead and save as a Blender file. And then I'm not going to need this UV editor for a while now, so I'm going to go ahead, and in order to get rid of this, I'm just going to simply drag off of the two little angled lines to the top right of our left-hand window and drag to the right. And you'll see this arrow come up over the window. And when I let go, it's going to go ahead and get rid of that window for us. So now we're going to do something a little bit more complicated. We're going to do the walls. So we want to make sure that we're in edit mode again. So I'm going to hit tab, and it'll show us down here what mode we're in. So we want to be in object mode, not edit mode. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to add a new plane in. And this plane will show up in our outliner to the right here as a new plane. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to call this wall. Now I want to go ahead and rotate this plane. So I'm going to hit the R key to rotate it. And I want to rotate it along the X axis. So I'm going to hit the X key. And then I'm going to type in 90. And we can left click. And our plane is rotated upwards at 90 degrees. Now, we want to be able to see which side has the normals on it that's reflecting light. So down to the right of this menu at the bottom here, I'm going to check backface culling. And that is going to show us the solid side and the non-UV side. So this side is the solid side, and this side is the side that we can see through. So we definitely want the solid side to be the inside of our wall. And we're going to want to go ahead and move this. So for our location in our menu up here, we're going to want to move it 3 meters in the positive direction where the Y arrow is facing. So for our location for Y, I'm going to go ahead and set this to 3, and that'll move it over there. We're also going to have to resize this. So for dimensions along the X axis, we want it to be as long as the corridor. So I'm going to go ahead and set this to 10 meters. And then for Y, I want it to be 3 meters tall. So I'm going to type in 3. And then we have to go ahead and offset it so that the bottom of this plane hits the bottom of the floor, or the top of the floor. So I'm going to go ahead and for the location here, for Z, I'm going to set this to 1.5, which is half the height of the wall. And now our planes will go ahead and intersect at the bottom here. Now, to give our wall a little bit of dimension here, I want to go ahead and fold the top of this in a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and go into edit mode. So with this wall panel selected, I'm going to go ahead and hit tab to bring us into edit mode. And we're going to insert a couple of loop cuts. A loop cut will essentially add a pair of vertexes across here and an edge in between it. So if we tap Control R and we get near an edge, it's going to show this purple line. And it will appear perpendicular to the edge we're near. So I'm going to set it along the long edge here. And I want to add in 2 loop cuts. So in order to do that, I'm just going to roll my mouse wheel up until 2 loop cuts appear. And then I'm going to go ahead and left click to accept that selection. And we're going to be able to move these loop cuts around. But I don't really need them anywhere that the tool is going to place them. So to put them in their default positions, I'm just going to go ahead and right click. And it will insert these 2 loop cuts for us. Now, I want to put these loop cuts at certain heights. So we're going to go to the bottom here, and to the right of our object mode, edit mode, if we move over to the right, there are these 3 images for vertex select, edge select, and face select. And these are different selection tools that we can use inside of Blender. I'm going to go ahead and select the edge select. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on our lower loop cut that we have in place. And I want to go ahead and set it to a specific height. So if I go up to our transform at the top right here, I'm going to first of all set this to global. And I want to go ahead and set the Z height on this. Basically, I want like a running board along here. So for the Z, I'm going to go ahead and set this to, let's say, 0.1 which will be 10 centimeters. Also, if you want to enter centimeters, you can go ahead and type in 10 and then cm, and that'll set it to 10 centimeters as well. And then we're going to go ahead and click on this top loop cut that we created here. And actually 2 meters is kind of where I want it. So that'll be perfectly fine. We can live with that. Now, in order to bring the ceiling inward, I'm going to go ahead and left click on the top edge here. And we're going to go ahead and adjust the Y. So right now the Y is set at 3 meters. I'm going to go ahead and set this to, let's say, 2 meters. And you'll see that it brings our face or our edge inward, which causes the panel to bend. So for some reason in sci-fi, if you truncate corners on anything, it looks sci-fi-y. If you look at Battlestar Galactica and the pieces of paper that they held, basically they had just standard pieces of paper with the corners cut off. So for some reason, to us, anything with truncated edges looks sci-fi-like. And then I want to bring the kickboard out a little bit. So what I'm going to end up doing for this is I'm going to go back down to our selection here, and I'm going to select our face select, and I'm going to select our kickboard face at the bottom here. And I want to bring it out a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the E button, and this is going to extrude. So if I move this around, it's going to go ahead and bring the face out and then reconnect it back to where it was originally at. But I want to set this to a specific distance. So once I have it extruded like this, I'm going to go ahead and right click, and it's going to drop it back into the position it was originally, but the extrusion is still going to be there. So I'm just going to bring this in on the Y axis a little bit. So for the Y value here, it's set to 3 meters. I'm going to go ahead and set it to 2.95, and we'll see how we like that. That looks like a pretty good depth. And then I want to create sort of an angle upward here. So I'm going to go back to my edge select tool, and we're going to go ahead and select the edge in the crease here. And right now it's set to 10 centimeters. So I'm going to try to set it to 15 centimeters. And I'm liking that pretty well. So I'm going to go ahead and stick with that. Now we're going to have these edges along the side and the bottom, or these faces that are in here. So I'm going to go ahead and select our face tool. And on this side, I'm going to go ahead and select that face. I'm going to go ahead and hit X, and we're going to delete faces. And that'll get rid of that face for us. And I'll rotate to the bottom, and I'll select this face that runs along the bottom edge here. I'm going to go ahead and hit X again and delete faces. And then I'm going to go ahead and rotate around to the other side, and I'm going to delete this face as well. Now it's going to come in a little bit from the edge of our floor plane here, which is not really a big issue at all. If you really want, you can go ahead and grab this edge and drag it in a little bit, but it's not particularly necessary. We can have a little bit of overlap there, and it's not going to be that big of a deal. So this is basically going to complete the wall panel here. Now in order to spruce it up later on, I'm probably going to design some separate objects as wall panels, and then go ahead and drop them into the level, rather than design right on these walls themselves. So we want to go ahead and unwrap this just like we unwrapped our floor. So I'm going to go ahead and hit A so that everything is selected. I'm going to drag out a new window again, and we'll hide the menu to the left and the menu to the right with the T and the N key. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch over to the UV image editor here. So we're going to go over to the shading and UV tab on our left window here with everything selected. I'm going to go ahead and put in flat shading, and then we're going to go to unwrap. Now, because this is all one object and there are no real sharp corners in here, we can just basically unwrap it as it is. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the unwrap button, and we're going to select unwrap. And you're going to see right here that it creates the panel. And basically we have the upper portion here, the middle portion here, and then the two lower portions for the kickboard. So exactly as it appears from top to bottom in here is how you see it in here. But the side over here doesn't extend all the way over. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the B key to box select. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drag down and select this right-hand side here. And actually, we're going to have to deselect everything in this window. So I'm going to hit the A key, and that's going to deselect everything. So I'm going to hit the B key to box select. And I'm going to select this entire side right here. And if we bring up the side menu over here with the N, we'll see that the X and the Y positions are at the top of the vertex. Now the Y is the up and the down, and the X is the horizontal. And right now it's sitting at 200 for the X position. And the size of this image is actually on a grid of 256. So I'm going to go ahead and in our X here, I'm going to set this to 256 and hit enter. And it will go ahead and take up the whole image right here. So that's going to complete our UV map. So now we're going to want to go ahead and create a light map for this as well. So to the right here in our UV maps, I'm going to click the plus button. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to go to Smart UV Project. And once again, we'll have the island margin at 0.05. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And it's going to go ahead and create this image, even though it's rotated 90 degrees. It's still the same image. And if we select between the two of them, we'll see the same thing, just rotated 90 degrees. If we really want, we can rotate this around. So I'm just going to hit the B key to box select, and I'm going to select all of this. I'm going to hit R to rotate it, and then I'm going to type in, let's see if it's 90 or negative 90. It looks like it's negative 90. So I'm going to type in negative 90, and that'll rotate it upright. And I'm going to go ahead and hit the enter key. And we now have a vertically facing panel. And as I had mentioned with light maps in the previous video, if there's not a sharp angle, you do not need to break up these faces. Now, if we had something like a cube, you would want to separate all sides of the cube to prevent light from bleeding over. But since these are softer angles, lighting will naturally bleed over, and it'll look much better if there is no breakup between the shading of the top portion and the shading of the main portion of the wall. Alright, so at this point we have our UV map and our light map completed for the wall. So once again, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab this top little grab point and drag it over to close our image editor. And we could do this all at once at the very end, but I figure we might as well just go through each and every one as we do it. So we have a wall and we have a floor. Now we're going to need a ceiling. And I'm not going to make another wall because basically I'm just going to have it so that you can rotate this around 90 degrees and place it on the other side. So we don't have to create two separate objects for this wall. We can have just one, and we can just basically put multiple instances of the wall in the level. Plus, if later down the line you design another wall for this hallway, say you want to add a doorway in over here, you can go ahead and design a doorway for it and put it on the opposite side. Or if you want to have a hallway that isn't the same on both sides, create a little bit of unbalance in there, you can do that as well. So now we're going to have to go ahead and create a ceiling. So we're in edit mode. I'm going to go ahead and hit the tab key to bring us back into object mode. And we're going to have to add a new plane in for the ceiling. So to the left in the create tab, I'm going to go ahead and hit the plane button to add another plane in place. And this is sitting on the floor again. So we're going to want to adjust the position. Now the top of this wall right here is at 3 meters. So I'm going to go to our transform and I'm going to set the Z to 3 meters. And it is facing the wrong direction. The UV is facing upward and we want it to face downward. So we're going to hit the R key to rotate it, and we want to rotate it on the x-axis, and we want to rotate it 180 degrees. So I'm going to type in 180 and hit enter. And that will rotate our plane 180 degrees so it's facing downward. Now for the ceiling width here, we can go ahead and we brought the top edge of this wall in 1 meter. So instead of being 3 meters wide, instead of being 6 meters wide like the floor, it's only going to be 4 meters wide. So under our dimensions here, on the Y scale, we're going to want to go ahead and make this 4 meters. And then for the X, we're going to want to take up the whole hallway, so we're going to set the X to 10 meters. So if we look inside of our hallway here, it's going to go ahead and line up with the edge of this wall right there. And I also had the little running light going down the center here, or the little center beam with the light in the center. And we're going to want to go ahead and add that too. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to add in a series of loop cuts here. So I'm going to go over to the edit mode. So I'm going to hit the tab key. And we're going to want to add in 2 loop cuts. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Control R. And I'm going to place it along the short edge here so that it cuts along the length. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel up to have 2 selections. I'm going to left click. And now we're going to be able to position it, but I'm just going to go ahead and right click so that it drops it in its default position. Now, if we use our edge select tool down here and we click on one of these, we're going to see that in the Y position, this one is set to 66.66666 centimeters. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set this to 75 centimeters. And then for the other edge here, I'm going to do the same, but in the negative. So I'm going to set it to negative 75 centimeters. And now we're going to have to bring it out in order to create that little 3D downward angle that I had. So I'm going to go ahead and select the face select tool here. And I'm going to select our center face. And we're going to hit the E key to extrude. And we'll see that we can do this. And I'm going to right click to drop it back in place. And then we're going to want to drop it down some. So for the height of this, we're going to go to the Z right here. And right now it sits at the same plane as the rest of the other 2 planes that are up there. Let's see how far we can bring it down and actually make it look good. So I'm going to go ahead and set it to, let's say, 2.75 meters. And I like it. And we want to create that truncated shape we had. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale the plane down, but I only want to scale it in the y-axis. So I want these 2 edges to come in towards each other without disturbing the end edges. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit the S key to scale. And if you move the mouse closer or further away, you'll see that the whole plane itself scales. But I only want it to scale in the Y, so I'm going to hit the Y key, and we're going to bring it in a little bit like this. And I'm going to set the scale to 75%. So on a keyboard, I'm going to type in 0.75 and hit enter. And we'll see that we have this bulge in the center. And actually, I think it might look a little too deep cut in. So for the Z, with this plane selected, I'm going to set it to, let's try 2.8. And, okay, I can live with 2.8. That looks pretty decent. So I'm going to want to get rid of these faces on the end here. So with our face tool selected, I'm going to go ahead and click on the face on the end, hit X and delete faces. And then we'll rotate around and we'll hit X and delete the face over here. So now we have this deformed plane that's going on that gives us a kind of ridge in the center and gives some interesting aspects to our hallway. So the next thing I'm going to want to do is I want to add in the recess for the lighting in the center here. So we're going to go ahead and insert a loop cut. So I'm going to hit Control R, and I'm going to roll it up to 2, and we're going to go ahead and click, and then I'm going to right click to put it back into position where it originally was. Now we're going to select the edge tool down here, and I want to select the entirety of this edge. If I click on just this edge here, it's just going to select the edge between the two vertexes that it resides in. But if I want to select the entire loop, I'm going to have to go ahead and hold the Alt key and select one of these edges. Now you'll see that it has the entirety of the loop cut that we just selected. And I'm going to adjust this on the X axis right here. So right now it's sitting at a negative 1.66 meters. I'm going to set this to just -1. And then I'm going to go ahead and hold Alt and select the edge for our other loop cut here. And I'm going to set the X to 1. So now we're going to have to make a little bit of a recess for our light here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to our face select tool. I'm going to select the face in the center. And we're going to go ahead and hit E to extrude. And we can go ahead and extrude like this. So I'm going to right click to drop it back in its original place. And then to the right, for the Z, I'm going to go ahead and set this to our 3 meters. But we want to create kind of like an inset, like the outer edge. So I'm going to go ahead and hit S to scale. And we can drag it in and out manually like this. And right there, it's sitting at about 0.9. So I'm going to type in the keyboard 0.9 and hit enter. And that is looking pretty good. I'm liking the way that's looking. So basically, that's going to complete the ceiling piece for all the modeling we're going to have to do with it. It's pretty simple and straightforward. It's low poly. So now let's go ahead and UV unwrap this. So I'm going to go ahead and hit A on the keyboard until everything is selected. I'm going to go to our shading and UVs, and I'm going to select flat for the faces. We're going to drag over our image editor again, or the second window. We're going to hide these windows here with the T and the N key. And I'm going to go ahead and select our UV image editor. And then we're going to go ahead and, once again, this is a pretty flat object. There's no sharp angles or anything really going on. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and hit the unwrap button and select unwrap. And some of this may look a little bit deformed here. So let's check it out. If I select just this face in here, it's going to be that center face right there. So I'm going to reselect everything. And it's a little bit warped, and we might have to do some extra here. So let's go ahead and we'll see what the Smart Unwrap does. We're going to select Smart UV Project, and I'm going to set the island margin to 0. And we're going to hit OK. And this kind of breaks things up a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and we're just going to go with the standard unwrap here. And let's see, we might have to do some adjusting to get this to kind of fit right. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit B to box select. Well, first I have to unselect everything. So I'm going to hit the A key to unselect everything. I'm going to hit B to box select and select this edge. And we'll hit G to grab it, and we can go ahead and pull it over a little bit. And we're going to pull it pretty close to the edge here. And it's a little crooked, so I'm going to hit S to scale it. And we want to scale it on the X-axis, and I'm going to scale it to 0. So just type in S, X, and then 0, and hit Enter. And then I'm going to go ahead and deselect all. And I'm going to hit box select, and we're going to select this row right here. And we're going to S, X, 0 to scale it to 0 and make it straight. I'm going to do the same thing for this edge over here. First, we have to deselect everything. So I'll hit A to deselect everything, and then I'll hit B to box select. And we'll select this, and we'll scale on the X 0. And we'll do the same thing finally for this edge over here. So we'll deselect everything by hitting the A key. Hit B to box select and select all of this edge. We'll hit S to scale, and we want to scale on the X, so we'll hit the X key, and then we'll hit 0. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the Y edges here, because they look a little messed up. So we're going to deselect everything. We'll hit B to box select, and I'll select this top row. And we're going to hit S to scale, and Y to scale on the Y axis. And then type in the number 0 and hit enter. And then we're going to go ahead and repeat the same thing with these edges down here. So we'll select it, we'll hit S to scale, Y to scale it on the Y, and 0 to flatten it out. So we'll deselect everything with A, use B to box select, S to scale on the Y, we'll hit the Y button and set it to 0 and hit enter. A to deselect everything, B to box select, select this row, S to scale, Y on the Y scale, and 0 to flatten it out. A to deselect everything, B to box select, S to scale, Y to scale on the Y, and 0 to flatten it out. And finally, we'll do the same thing down here. We'll go ahead and B, box select, S, Y, 0. And then we have to fix the box in the center. So I'm going to go ahead and deselect, and we'll select these top two here. We'll go ahead and S to scale on the Y to 0. And we'll go ahead and box select these bottom two, and S, Y, and 0. And then we can scale out the vertical portion as well. So we'll go ahead and B to box select, scale, S to scale, X to scale on the X, and 0. A to deselect, and then we'll go ahead and B box select this, S to scale, X to scale, X button to scale on the X, and 0 to flatten it out. And then I'm going to go ahead and I want to slide this center portion over to the side. So we're going to go ahead and A to deselect, and I'm going to go ahead and B to box select, and I'm going to select the center two rows here. And if we bring up the panel on the right here, it's going to show us the aggregate X position and Y position. And I want to kind of set this to the center. So the center position would bring it to an average of 128. So let's try setting the X to 128. And that's going to go ahead and center it in the center of our image. So our UV is now looking pretty good. So next we're going to have to go ahead and create a light map for it. So in order to create the light map, I'm going to go ahead and hit the plus button over here. And we're going to go to our UV unmapping, or UV unwrap over here. And we're going to select our Smart UV Project. And we're going to set the island margin to 0.05 and hit OK. And it seems to have kind of broken up the entire image right here. I'm not sure how I feel about this one. We might just have to go ahead and see how it plays out when it gets into the game engine. But here is where it's showing different islands. So it kind of cuts everything up based on angles here. And you know what? Let's just see how this plays out when we get it into the Unreal Engine. So that's going to go ahead and complete unwrapping for our ceiling. So I'm going to grab our little grab point up here, and I'm going to drag it over to go ahead and close our UV image editor. And we haven't saved in a while, so I'm going to go up to File and Save. And the only two things we have left to take care of are the bulkheads and the doors. And we're also going to have to do some material painting on the objects here. And you know what? I'm going to take care of that material painting right now. So for this top ceiling here, if we go over to Unreal Engine, you'll see that I have this center area here as a different color from the rest of the wall. And then this material in the white is actually a separate material as well. So there's 3 different materials on the ceiling. And let's go ahead and set that up. So we're going to go over to our right-hand panel over here, and we're going to find the Materials tab, which is kind of like this circle with the checker pattern in here. And this is where the list of materials would be. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the plus button to the right to add a new material. And down here, we're going to click on the New Material button. And we can color this to just kind of show us what it's going to select so we can tell the difference between the materials. Because I want to build the materials in the game engine. I'm not going to really mess around with materials here in Blender. And so for the first material, we can go ahead and assign it to just be this white color. So with everything selected over here, I'm going to go ahead and hit the Assign button. Then we're going to go ahead and click the plus button to the right of that. And we're going to create a new material again. And for this one, I'm going to change the color of it to red so that we can tell the difference. And now we're going to have to paint the materials that we want to be in the red color. So I'm going to hit A to deselect everything. And I'm going to make sure that we're in the face select here. And we're going to go ahead and hit C to paint select. And you can go ahead and left click and color all of this in. And if you make a mistake and accidentally go over to unhighlight something, you click the middle mouse button. So if I go ahead and paint these up here and I go, oh crap, I don't want those, instead of repainting it all again, just middle mouse click and it will go ahead and unpaint it. So once we have the area that we wanted highlighted, I'm going to go ahead and right click to exit out of our paint select. And we're going to go to the right, and with this material 01, the red material highlighted, we're going to go ahead and hit Assign. And then we're going to have to create one last material for the light. So we're going to create a new material, and I'm going to color this blue so that we can tell what it is. And we just want the center plane in here to be blue. So I'm just going to left click on that center plane, and I'm going to click on the blue material and hit Assign. So when this comes over to Unreal Engine, it's going to recognize that there's 3 different materials on this one object. And if we hit Tab to go back to our object mode, we're going to have to do the same thing to our wall over here. So once we have our wall selected, I'm going to hit Tab to go into Edit mode. And in our material editor here, we're going to go ahead and create a new material and hit the New button. And that'll create a new material for us. And we'll go ahead and with everything selected here, hit Assign. And then I just want to color these borders down here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the bottom edge here. And then go ahead and shift click this next plane above it. So our little kickboard here. And we're going to go to the right, add a new material. We're going to click on New. And then we'll change the color so we can tell the difference. And we're going to hit Assign. So now we have 2 materials on this wall over here, and we have 3 materials on our ceiling. So I'm going to go ahead and tab out into object mode, and we'll go ahead and perform a save quickly. And with the bulkhead doors, the way I want to set this up is that the bulkhead will slightly overlap the edges of the connecting faces right here. So it'll slightly come in from the edge of the end of each one of these planes. So in order to create this, we're going to go ahead and we're going to add a new primitive to our scene. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to add in a cube, and the 3D cursor should be at the center when you do this. So let me back up. I'll Control Z to back up. If it's not in the center there, just call it ahead and hit Shift C, and it'll go ahead and recenter the 3D cursor to the origin. And we'll go ahead and hit the plane. Or, I'm sorry, that was the wrong one. I'll Control Z to get rid of that. We're going to go ahead and add a cube. And then to the right here, I'm going to rename this to, I'm going to call it the doorway. So now we have to reshape this guy. So I'm going to go into Tab to go into Edit mode. And I'm going to grab the face at the bottom. So with the face selected, I'm going to select the bottom face. And I'm going to go ahead and to the Z, I'm going to set this to 0. So this is going to sit flat on the floor. And you know what? Actually, I probably should bring it a little bit through the floor. So for the Z, I'm going to set it to -5 centimeters. And then for the left plane here, or the, excuse me, we're going to go to the top plane next. I want to set it just above the surface. So for the Z, I'm going to set this to 5 centimeters. So it's going to sit just above the floor like this. And that should be good. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select on this plane here. And we want to bring it out to the edge. So I'm going to go ahead and set it out to just beyond this wall edge. We'll set it to 3. So for the X or the Y value here, I'm going to go ahead and set this to 3 meters. And that'll bring it to line it up with this face over here. Now, instead of doing the same thing on both sides, we're going to go ahead and use a modifier. And you know what? We're going to have to undo that movement. So I'm going to hit Control Z to bring it back to the center like this. And we're going to go ahead and add in a loop cut. So I'm going to hit Control R. And we just want one loop cut down the center of the X-axis here. So I'm going to go ahead and click and then right click to put it in the center. And I'm going to use our select tool. We're going to go to face select here. And I'm going to click on these edges and then hold shift to expand the selection. We want to select everything on this side of the X-axis. And we're going to hit X and we're going to delete faces. So this is going to leave our box with one face missing and just the half on the left-hand side of our X-axis. So we're going to go ahead and add a modifier. And I'm going to go ahead and click on the wrench tool up to the top right. And we're going to click on Add Modifier. And we're going to select a mirror modifier. And we're going to mirror it across different axes. So I'm going to uncheck the X and I'm going to check the Y. And what you're going to see now is that it makes a virtual copy of whatever this is across the X-axis. And these are a little bit confusing because it's what axis it makes it along. So this is along the Y-axis. So it looks like it's mirrored over the X, and really it's mirrored along the Y-axis. And we want to go ahead and turn clipping on. So we should have the Y check box checked, merge checked, clipping and vertex groups checked. And then to make it easier even more, in order to kind of make it even between the left and the right, we're going to go ahead and Control R and add a loop cut during the center down the Y-axis. And I'm going to right click to lock it in place. And I'm going to go to face select, and we're just going to pick one edge here. And we're going to go ahead and hold shift and select all the faces on one side of the Y-axis. And I'm going to go ahead and hit X and delete faces. So that'll leave us with just this one corner. And then over to the right, I'm going to go ahead and check that X-axis. So what that's going to do is it's going to mirror this one corner across the X-axis and across the Y-axis. So that way we can cut the amount of work that we have to do way down. So I'm going to go to our face select here, and I'm going to select this edge. And we're going to go ahead and bring it back in a little bit. And we want this to kind of be the thickness of the door. So for our X here, I'm going to set it, I happen to put mine on the negative axis of the X, which I should have made it the other side, but we can deal with it. So I'm going to go ahead and set this to negative 25 centimeters. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab this face along the edge here. And we're going to go ahead and set the X, or correction, we're going to set the Y to 3 meters. So that's going to drag it out over here. And then we're going to want to have a column coming up. And we want to have those truncated edges. So, in order to accomplish this, I am going to go ahead and we're going to Control R to make a loop cut across our portion like this. And I'm going to left click. And we're going to drag it in down here. And I'm going to set it to somewhere around here. With it still selected, we can set the Y position here. So I'm going to set this to 2.75. And then I'm going to go ahead and go back to our face select and select the top face. And we want to hit E to extrude it. And I'm going to right click to drop it back in original place. And to the right for the Z, I'm going to set this to 3 meters. So this is going to travel all the way up. And it's going to travel through our wall, but we'll take care of that, so don't worry about it for now. And then I'm going to go ahead and Control R to insert another loop cut here. And we want to set it along the short edge like this. And I'm going to just drop it in somewhere like there. And we want to go ahead and let's place it at, we'll say 2.8 meters. And then we're just going to go back into our face select. We're going to select the inside face here. We're going to go ahead and hit E to extrude. And this, I'm just going to grab the manipulator and I'm going to drag this all the way across until it meets this other face for the mirrored image that we have. So now we have a border outline for our bulkhead here. We can actually work on it. So taking a look at the corner up here, we want to go ahead and create that truncated edge along here. So in order to do that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to add in a loop cut down here. So I'm going to hit Control R, and we're going to add a vertical loop cut along the edge right here. And we'll click it to right about there in place. And we'll set the Z to be 2 meters. So that'll line up with the edge of the wall right here. And then we're going to have to kind of maneuver the camera to see this, or actually we can hide this wall. So to the right in our overview here, next to the wall, there's a little eyeball. I'm going to go ahead and click on that to hide the wall. And using our edge select tool, I'm just going to select this inside edge right here. And we can put our wall back in place. So I'm going to make that visible. And I'm going to go ahead and start dragging this over. And it doesn't look like I got all of it, so I'm going to Control Z and we'll hide our wall again. And it looks like I accidentally selected the wrong edge. So we want this inside edge here. And we're going to just use the green manipulator to kind of drag it inside. And then we might want to bring this other edge with us. So I'm going to Control Z too. And we're going to want to select the top edge here. So I'm going to hold Shift and left click on that edge. And if we start bringing it in, that looks a lot better. So I'm going to bring our wall back into place here. And this edge here is sitting at 2 meters in. So for our Y, I'm going to set this to, let's see here, we're going to set it to 1.75. And that looks like a little bit much. So I'll set it to 1. Nope. I hit the wrong buttons there. So let's see. Well, we can select this edge here. Let's find out where this edge is located. So on the y-axis, this is 2.75. And we're going to select this edge and the top edge as well. So for our y-axis here, it's set to 1.75, but it doesn't quite look right. So we're going to drag this a little bit in here, and we're going to kind of eyeball it to make it look like it's in line with that. All right, so that looks pretty good. We're going to go ahead and live with that. And you'll notice on the other side here is mirroring what we're doing as well. And then we want to create like a little bit of a hump around here to go around the light well. And I'm still kind of put off a little bit by this. Let's go ahead and set it to 1.9. Let's see what that looks like on the y-axis. And actually I think I hit it right there. And it might be a little bit off. Say 1.95. Okay, I'm going to live with 1.95 on the y-axis there. All right, so we're going to have to go ahead and create that little hump that goes around here that kind of makes it look sci-fi. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to Control R, and we're going to add 2 loop cuts in up here. So right click to drop it in place. And we'll go ahead and with our line select tool, I'm going to alt select this line cut right here. And we're going to see if we can get it right about lined up with this edge. And it's sitting at 56 centimeters here. So we'll go ahead and type in 55 centimeters, or that's meters. So 55 centimeters. And that actually seems a little off, so we'll go 56 centimeters. So that looks about right. And then we're going to go ahead and alt-click on this loop cut over here. And we'll drag it right about over here where it is. And we can set this to 75 centimeters. And then all we're going to need to do is go to our face select tool, and we're going to grab this face. And I'm just going to go ahead and start dragging it down. And I forgot how much we actually drug this top portion down here. But we can kind of eyeball it if we really want, if it doesn't look too bad. So I'll set this to 2.6 meters here. And I am going to go ahead and live with that. That looks pretty good. So we're just about done with our bulkhead here. Now we have these modifiers that are in place. I forgot about the truncation along the bottom here. So let's go ahead and take care of that truncation. So if we select this edge right here, we'll go to our edge select and select this. This is at a vertical of 2 meters. So we're going to go ahead and add another cut in here, and I'm going to right click to lock it in position. And we're going to set the Z on this loop cut to 1 meter. And then I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to grab this edge. And I'm going to scroll down to the bottom and grab this underside edge as well. And then using the manipulator, I'm just going to start dragging it in. And we want to set it up to the same horizontal place as the top one here. So if we select this edge, the Y is set to 1.95. So I'll go ahead and I'll grab this edge and grab the bottom edge here. And we'll set the Y to 1.95. And so we have a nice little truncated corner edge series going on in here. So that looks pretty good. Now this one I am not going to drag out to the end over here because we basically want this centered. And since the floor and the walls and everything are done in whole 1 meter segments, if we use our 50 or 100 snap grid, we can basically just drop this in place along this edge. So now we have our door pretty much complete, and we're going to have to get rid of these modifiers in order to simplify our mesh a little bit. So we're going to hit Tab to go back to object mode, And with our doorway still selected, we're going to go ahead and hit apply on our modifier. Now if we hit tab again to go back into edit mode, you'll see that it actually placed all the geometry in place, but we are going to have extra geometry because we use those modifiers. So up here, there's this edge that's right in the center that we really don't need. So I'm going to select my edge tool, and I'm going to alt left click on that edge, and it didn't cut all the way around. So I'm just going to hold shift and select all the edges around here so that we get the entire cut. And we're going to hit X, and we're going to go down to dissolve edges. And it isn't dissolving the edges. We might have some messed up geometry because of that. So let's go over to the tools, and we're going to go ahead and click on remove doubles. And it didn't remove anything, which is weird. So if we hit X and dissolve edges, it is not dissolving our edge. Let's try around the outside edge here. I'm going to go Alt and left click around this outside edge. And it seems to select everything, so we'll go ahead and hit X and dissolve edges. And it got rid of the center cut down the center there, which we don't need. And we'll try the inside ring too. So I'm going to go ahead Alt and left click on the center ring. And it does go ahead and get rid of everything here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit X and dissolve edges. And we can try this bottom one too. So I'm going to go ahead and Alt left click, and it selects that entire ring. So I'm going to go ahead and hit X and dissolve edges. And then this guy up here, we try it again. It is not working for us. For some reason, it really doesn't want to go ahead and see this as a loop cut. Let's go ahead and select all, and we'll try and remove doubles again. And it didn't remove anything. For some reason, this really doesn't want to go ahead and remove this. It isn't really going to be a big deal not to remove that, but I have no idea why it's not removing that cut right along the edge there. I mean, we can go ahead and do this manually if you really want. If we go to the edge or the vertex select tool and we grab this, it is sitting in the right position. Oh, it looks like there's a stray vertex right in here, and one at the top too that it didn't get rid of. So I'm going to select this vertex, I'm going to hit X, and we're going to dissolve vertex. And I'm going to do the same thing for this vertex on the top, hit X, and dissolve vertex. And let's go ahead and try to loop select everything again. So I'm going to go ahead and select all those lines. We'll hit X and dissolve edges. And it still doesn't want to work. And it looks like it's all cut together. So, you know what? We can just leave that in place. That's not really going to be that much of an issue. Now, those stray vertexes that were in there for whatever reason, we definitely did want to go ahead and get rid of. If we really want to get rid of these faces here, I guess we can go ahead and hit X and delete the edges, which will go ahead and, oh, it looks like there's some extra edges in here. So let's go to our vertex select, and oh, there's even more vertexes in there for some reason. So I'm going to select all of these, and we're going to hit X, and we're going to dissolve the vertices. And then for the bottom plane here, I'm going to go ahead and click on this corner here, hold shift, and click the other 4 vertices on this flat panel. and then hit F to fill it. And then I'm going to do the same thing for each one of the sides. So click on one of the vertices, hold Shift, and click the other vertices, and hit F to fill that panel in. And I'm going to do the same thing for this top panel as well, and hit F. And then select some of these vertices, and hit F. All right, so we have single objects around here, or single planes, single faces around there. So we don't have any extra geometry that we don't really need, which is definitely a good thing. If I hit A again and remove doubles, remove 0 vertices again. So this guy should be ready to go ahead and get exported. So we're going to have to go ahead and do the UVs again. So I'm going to bring out our panel and hit T and N to hide those side panels. I'm going to go to our UV image editor, and we're going to go to our data tab, and we'll go ahead and make sure everything is selected. And we're going to go ahead, and this might be a little bit more complicated because it is a more complex 3D shape. So let's take a look and see how this is going to work. So we're going to go to our shading and UVs. I'm going to select flat faces, and then we're going to go to unwrap, and I'm going to try the smart UV project and set the island to 0 and hit OK. And this is kind of what it comes up with. And we have these 2 areas around here and a lot of empty space in the center. And this isn't exactly the best unwrap in the world. So if we just regularly unwrap it, it's going to do the same thing. Let's go ahead and mark some seams. So I'm going to go to our edge select tool here, and I'm going to hit A to deselect all. I'm going to figure out how we can cut this thing apart. So I'm going to go ahead and select these edges along the outside here. And we're going to go to the left here and click on Mark Seam. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for these outside edges on the other side. So we're going to go ahead and click on the edge. I'll hold Alt and Shift and select each one of these edges. And then we'll go ahead, and once that entire border is selected, click on Mark Seam. And then we're going to want to click up here on one of these edges, and we're going to mark the seam for that. And then we're going to have to go ahead and unwrap the center too. And I'm going to go ahead and just alt click on this underside right here. And we're going to select this inside edge here, and we're going to go ahead and mark a seam. So we have one edge inside of here marked. We have the 2 outside rings marked, and one of the corners is marked as well. So let's go ahead and click on Unwrap and unwrap this. We're going to have to select everything, and we're going to go to Unwrap. And that doesn't look particularly great either. So you know what? We're just going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and clear all the seams here. And I'm not the greatest at modeling, like I mentioned before, so I'm just going to use the Smart UV Project here, and we're going to leave it as that. The UV really isn't that important to us because we're not going to be applying any textures to it, or I'm not going to be applying any textures to it. So really, I'm kind of fighting the wind on this one. So I'm going to leave it as is like this, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to add a new UV map. We're going to have to do the light map, so we're going to go ahead, unwrap Smart UV Project, and we're going to set the island margin to 0.05 again, and click on OK. And it's going to produce the same thing. And it isn't going to be the greatest light map in the world, but I don't have that much experience with unwrapping. So if anybody out there does do modeling and has any tips for these unwrapping, that would be greatly appreciated. But this is going to get us by with our solid material colored object. And so the last thing we actually have to do is the door itself. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of this image over here. I'm going to tab into object mode. And we're going to have to go ahead and I'm going to go to create and we're going to add a cube. And we're going to rename this object. We're going to call it the door. And then we're going to go ahead and hit tab to go into edit mode. I'm going to go ahead and select the face. And then for this left face here, that's the positive direction. So I'm going to select the face on the negative direction here. I'm going to set the Y to 0. And then this edge right here, or the face right here, I'm going to select and I'm going to drag inward. And we're going to see about where we want it. So 15 looks good. So I'm going to set this to our negative 15 centimeters. And then I'm going to grab our face on the other side and I'm going to go ahead and set this to 15 centimeters as well. Oh, I selected the wrong one. So for the X value, I'm going to set it to 15 centimeters. And then we're going to rotate down. And this guy, I believe the top edge of this, if I remember correctly, was 5 centimeters. So I'm going to set this bottom Z to 5 centimeters. And then I'm just going to manually drag this up because I forgot what the distance was for this. So right about there, it's going to be 2.8 meters. So I'm going to set the Z to 2.8 meters. And then I'm going to grab this edge and we're going to go ahead and draw it back to about there. And that's going to be sitting on the Y at 2.75 meters. And then to create a kind of edge here where the door kind of tapers inward, I'm going to go ahead and add in a loop cut. So I'm going to hit Control R and I'm going to drag this over towards the edge here. And we can set the Y on this to about 15 centimeters. And then I'm going to use our face select tool to select the face on the end. And I'm going to hit S to scale, but I only want to scale it in the X direction. So I'll hit the X key, and we'll kind of drag it in a little bit like that. So it creates a little bit of a tapered edge, so there's some differentiation when we have two doors here. And I just want to check on this edge over here to make sure it is actually in there. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hide the doorway real fast. I'm going to select this face and we'll bring back the doorway. And I'm just going to drag this in a little bit because I want to make sure that it is actually inside of the door and we don't get anything weird like leaking lights in there. And at this point, we should be all good. That looks like our doorway completed. Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hide the doorway again. And really, we don't need these faces along the outside edges here because we're never ever going to see them. So using my face select tool, I'm just going to go ahead and select these faces, holding Shift to select multiple faces. And I'm going to go ahead and hit X, and we're going to delete the faces. So it's going to be empty inside. And we're only going to have the portions that we actually see. So that should be good. So we're just going to have to go ahead and unwrap this as well. So I'll drag in another window, use T and N to hide the windows, and we'll go ahead and select our UV image editor. And I'm going to go ahead and in this window to the left, hit A to select all. We'll go to shading in UVs, set it to flat, and we'll go ahead and let's try Smart UV Unwrap and set the island margin to 0 and hit OK. And that That is not the most genius thing I've ever seen before. Let's just try regular unwrap. All right, that looks a lot better. So I'm going to go ahead and use our box select over here, and we'll bring in the side menu here, and we'll set the Y to 256, and that looks pretty good. And then we're going to have to go ahead and create a UV map. So I'm going to hit the plus button next to our UV map, and we're going to go ahead and unwrap Smart UV Project with an island margin of 0.05, and we'll hit OK. And it did the same thing it did before, which isn't very good. So we're going to go ahead, and I'm just going to click on Unwrap, and we're just going to have to push the edges of these in a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and A to deselect all. I'm going to use B to grab border select, and we want to move this up to the top on our Y, but we want to bring it in a little bit. So I'm just going to go ahead and set the Y value to 250, and I'm going to deselect everything. And then we're going to hit B to box select the bottom here. And for the Y, I'm going to bring this to a value of, let's say, 5. A to deselect everything, and we're going to go ahead and box select this to the left. And the X we're going to set to 5. A to deselect, B to box select on the right. And we're going to set the X to 250. Like that. So we have a nice little island around the edges here. So we're going to go up and we're going to file and save again. And this video is getting on in time right now. So I'm just going to quickly wrap up. We have all of our objects here, so I'll hit Tab to go into Object Menu. And we can bring back our doorway, make that visible again. And so we pretty much have everything in place at this point to make the hallway. In the next video, I'm going to go ahead and transfer everything over. So we'll export it out of Blender, and then we'll go ahead and re-import it over into Unreal Engine, and then configure everything within Unreal Engine. And we'll also set up a base material that we can use to color everything in and get a nice effect on all of our materials. So that's going to complete today's video. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave them down below, or stop by my Facebook page. You can comment over there or message me. And of course, thanks for watching.